When I was 5, my parents bought me a magic set. It came in a black velvety box, complete with instructions, props, and a wand. Well, I was super excited, and I set myself the task of trying out all of the tricks to see which were my favorites. Now, my birthday was coming up, and I decided that as I had a captive audience, I would put on a show for them. So I identified my 3 favorite tricks, and I practiced in front of the teddy bears and the au pair and my little brother until I felt I had 2 out of 3 of the tricks down. Now, these first 2 tricks, they were kind of mechanical. Once you'd learned how to master them, they pretty much work guaranteed every time. But the finale, the magic banana trick, that was a different story. See, the trouble with the banana was that until you were in front of an audience, you couldn't really tell whether it was going to work or not. Many bananas were sacrificed on the altar of my ambition, and I had many a sleepless night in advance of the performance. But the day rolled round, I put on my cape, I lifted my wand, and we began. And the audience, they oohed at the matchbox trick, and they ahed when I did the disappearing ball. And then it was time for the banana. Would you like to see the trick? The same applies now. I have no idea whether this trick will work or not. So, after a 3, 2, 1, we're going to say the magic word abracadabra, okay? And we're just going to see what happens next. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. Wow! It's the cut the banana in half trick. On the day, it was immaculate. But isn't life often like that? Life is like the banana trick. You know, whether it's the new relationship, the new training we decide to commit to, the adventure we decide to go on, we often, almost always, have no idea what the result is going to be, what the final outcome is going to be. And sometimes that uncertainty makes us think that perhaps we shouldn't start, that it's all a bit too risky, right? But if we're going to be a bright, shining star, if we're going to find our sparkle and take it out into the world to do positive, exciting, moving, and engaging things, we're going to have to take the roller coaster. Toni Morrison, who's my favorite author, she said that life can either be a flat line where you completely avoid risk, or it can be a grand adventure. But for it to be that, we have to take the roller coaster. We have to get on board knowing that the outcome is uncertain, that the adventure itself could be scary and wrought with dangers, in order for us to have the experience and to go after the things that we long for. In my work as a career coach, it's my job to help people to rediscover, or perhaps discover for the first time, what we mean by their shine. And one of the best ways that I've found to do it is to take them back to the same age I was when I performed the magic show and found mine, 5 years old. Why is 5 so useful? Because 5's the time when you've got enough self-determination to know what you like to do. You're not going to be forced into anything, but young enough not to censor yourself because that thing might not be successful or you might not be the absolute best at it. And I didn't know it then, back when I performed my first magic show, but that was the moment at which I found my calling. Because I discovered that there was nothing more better, wonderful for me than the opportunity to engage an audience, to work on something, to find something that generates the aha or the wonder moment. And my career has been shaped by that over and over and over again since. So let's take a moment to go back to you at 5 years old. And I invite you, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes and go back to that little person at 5. What was it that you loved to do? Were you all about physical endurance, running as far as you possibly could, or beating your brother in the egg and spoon race? Did you love to make things, a mess, art, music? Were you never happier than when you were solving a problem or a puzzle, taking something apart, putting it back together? Have you got it? Do you remember yourself at that time? That's your shine. And it's my belief that if we nurture that experience of shine, that it's probably a large part of your working life or your play life now. But it's not always that way. Sometimes we get distracted, other things happen and get in the way. Sometimes we try something out, and when it doesn't work the way that we should, we lose a lot of confidence, and we decide that the fear of failure is just too great to allow that to happen again. Or sometimes a careless remark along the way, perhaps at school, perhaps at home, that tells us that if we're not going to be the absolute best at something, then we shouldn't even start, can really get between us and our sparkle. And that happens to all of us now and then, right? We take off our cape, we put our wand away, and we hide our shine. But what if I told you that there was a map to make the roller coaster an easier journey, a way to navigate across the bumps in the road, to be able to feel more confident even when those bumps inevitably happen, and therefore to be able to navigate towards the things that you dream of, whether we're rediscovering your inner 5-year-old or it's a new goal that you set for yourself later in life? Wouldn't the map make it a bit less scary? So I want to share with you what that looks and feels like. But first, I want to tell you another story. Now, I was going to tell you a story, the slide indicates, about a time that I did some stand-up comedy and I died on the stage. I was going to tell you that story, but I'm actually going to tell you a different story, a story about what's happening in my life right now. So about 5 years ago, I found my partner, my fiancé, Peter, and although I joke that he sort of crept up on me like a rash, I kind of always knew that we were going to end up together. And so a couple of years ago, we decided it would be a wonderful thing to start a family. I'd been on the fence for ages, but I'd met this great person. And there were various trials and tribulations required for us. It was not going to be the organic process that you normally engage with. So we finally decided to commit the time, the energy, the money to go for it. So imagine the delight and the astonishment when the first time we try, we become pregnant. Suddenly, this future opens up that's both exhilarating and terrifying. A due date goes onto the calendar, and I think I basically have this amount of time to do absolutely everything that I want to do before this momentous occasion dawns upon us. And, to give up coffee, really starting to feel quite sick. And we're heading towards some early scans. And when we go for the first scan, they say, we think your dates are a bit off. Maybe you're a bit earlier than we thought. Can you come back? And we think, sure, of course. And we count down the days till the opportunity to see the heartbeat for the first time. Well, we arrive at the scan, and it's all jovial and exciting, and I head off there, but when the scan begins, the sonographer's face goes poker. And they ask us to get dressed without saying anything. And suddenly, there's no heartbeat. There's no future. There's now a discussion about medical management and the risk of infection. We'd taken the roller coaster, and it wasn't going according to plan. So suddenly it's time to take the date off the calendar, to untell everyone that we've excitedly shared the news with, to start to experience and embrace our sorrow at things not going the way that the happy ever after dictates. But in that participation, in that sorrow, there are joyful things. There's the joy and the wisdom of learning of the courage of my body, the body that says, not this one, Erica, not this time. There's the generosity and the love and the support of friends who start to come together to share and support us and to tell their own stories of similar struggles. There's a connection with every mother with every woman and their partners around the world for whom this has been an experience that they have shared. Maybe early in pregnancy, maybe later, maybe even later than that. And I tell this story because we don't always like to tell the stories that don't have the happy ever after. Because we know that the roller coaster can go this way and it can go that. And in our carefully curated Facebook world, social media, we tell just the happy stories. No one posts on Facebook about their redundancy. No one shares their scan without a heartbeat on Instagram. But those stories are just as valuable. Those journeys still have their own reward. And if we have the opportunity in the future to hold a chubby bubba of our own someday, we'll be able to wear the battle scars of that journey with great pride. Anything worth doing in our lives requires navigating adversity. It requires the uncertainty of getting onto the roller coaster without knowing where you are going to land. And so often, we compare ourselves to the complete and realized product. You want to be a gymnast, but you didn't see Simone Biles' first tumble. You want to be a poet, but you didn't read Bob Dylan's first lines. You want to be a great racing car driver, but you weren't there on the day that Lewis Hamilton started. It's easy for us to imagine that the things that we aspire to, the people that we aspire to, the people we see as bright shining stars, that along the way they didn't take the tumbles, they didn't make the mistakes, they didn't feel the vulnerabilities that we feel when we head out on our adventure. But that's a myth. And those tales, they need telling. So, I promised you a map through which we could take the roller coaster with greater confidence. And not only feel less uncomfortable about the ways that things can go wrong, but in fact embrace them as markers on the road, essential markers on the journey between where we are now and the full realization of your shine, whatever that is, whether it's getting to climb a mountain or learning a new language or producing a healthy child. So I trained as a storyteller many years ago, and I was introduced to this map from storytelling. It's called The Hero's Journey, and it was devised by a man called Joseph Campbell. He was a professor of myth and legend, and one of the interesting things that he discovered was wherever he went in the world, everyone knew what a hero was. Everyone knew what an adventure story, a hero's journey, looked and felt like. And whether he was looking at the religious stories or the folk stories of Africa or Harry Potter, he discovered that we were telling the same story over and over again. This one structure of the classic adventure story that all heroines and heroes go on when they decide to leave what's familiar and head towards their shine. Now, the interesting thing about this map is, it makes for a great story, but you know what else? It's a map for our transformation. It's a map that you have traveled, a journey you have traveled. If you've ever left home, if you've ever begun a new relationship or a new job, if you've ever suffered an injury or something unexpected, you have been on this hero's journey. So I want to share it with you now. So the first chapter of your hero's journey is the call. That's the moment when you get moved to do something that's a little bit out of the ordinary. It might be because someone gives you a magic set. It might be because suddenly you wake up one day and go, what am I doing here? But usually it's difficult for us to accept the call because it requires us leaving what's known and stepping out into this uncertain space. So we often resist it initially. In chapter 2 of your hero's journey, you make the commitment. You decide that you're going to take action. I am going to run that half marathon. I am going to give up smoking. I am going to do my magic show. It's the moment where you decide and make that public commitment that says, I'm going to make that thing happen. I'm going to give it a darn good go. I'm going to give it everything that I have. And usually at that point, we're filled with energy, support, and enthusiasm because we're ready to hit the ground running. So we start off really well. In chapter 3, you enter the heart of the quest. That's when the trials and the tribulations start to happen. If you think about it, any great story wouldn't be so great if it was just really easy to do, would it? So there've got to be these moments where you're tested, where your resilience is tested, where your commitment is tested, where things are hard. And that's the nature of the quest. It starts to get tricky. We start discovering that the banana trick is not going to be as easy or even as good as we had hoped. In chapter 4, we enter the belly of the whale, so called because of the moment when Jonah finds himself inside of the heart of the whale. It's the time where we're way too far gone to scuttle back and pretend we're not doing that thing. And yet we look ahead and we see greater challenge, adversity, even a battle of some kind. So it's the time at which you and I start to doubt ourselves, we start to doubt our capacity to do what it is that needs to be done. And this is an essential part of any quest. In chapter 5, we find ourselves at the supreme ordeal, the grand battle. If you're Harry Potter, then you're fighting Voldemort. If you're me at 5, then you're doing a magic show. But it could be any defining moment that puts to the test the thing you wish to shine. Could be the race. It could be traversing the mountain. It could be speaking your first line in Italian. It could be standing up on stage. It could be the first day of your play. Whatever it is that's the defining moment, the apex of what you have been striving for. And sometimes that apex and that battle doesn't result in what you'd hoped or expected. Maybe not the first time round, maybe the next. Maybe it just looks different to how you thought it would be. But nevertheless, it's that crucial moment when you define yourself through all the work you've done in your experience. And in chapter 6, we encounter the return. The return is when the heroine returns back to the ordinary world, transformed by her experience. When the hero returns holding his golden fleece or his tablets of stone, and he's able to say to those who he turns to, I did it, and you could do it too. To hold that candle for them. Or even to say, I did it, and it didn't work out the way that I expected, but here are all the enormous things that I have learnt along the journey. We are all meant to shine, as children do. And when we take that shine and we use it as a force for good, we can be a positive force in the world, in our own lives, in our own communities. And in order to be able to do it, we have to be up for the journey being its own reward. We have to be up for navigating dangerous territory, uncharted territory, for the uncertainty of the outcome. We have to be able to honor our battle scars and the stories that we tell to share with others. So if you want to be a bright, shining star, whether that's by learning a new language, whether that's by learning a new skill, whether it's by singing a new song, whether it's through a healthy child, you have to take the roller coaster. Thank you.